Hello friends, it's Nico. It's actually storming, which is perfect. I love storms. It's not raining as hard as I would like, but it's thundery, it's stormy, it's lightningy. There's a little bit of rain, but not a giant rainstorm. So this video is kind of this is a slightly more serious video, and it is about how I became anemic, and the struggle that I'm still having on a daily basis. And honestly, I've taped this twice before over the past 2 years. I recorded this 2 years ago at my dad's house one day, and I ended up deleting it because I was not happy with it. And then I recorded it in 4 sections that I edited it together when I first moved here, and then I just deleted it. I guess it's because it's really hard to talk about, but I'm going to try to talk about it because it is still a struggle. And I watched Shane Dawson's new video with Eugenia Cooney, and I will say I'm very thankful that was not my story. It easily could have been if I continued down the path that I was going down, but I'm still struggling with what I started in high school. So let's start. I am the oldest of 5 children. If you haven't already known that, I am the oldest of 5. Kids tease each other, we're mean to each other, we beat each other up. It was wonderful growing up. Wonderful. And I actually mean that. It was great, and it was awful, but we had a very good family life. Even if we hated each other at home, we were very protective of each other out in public. But when I entered high school, the teasing at my house kind of took a harsh turn, and my siblings, my 3 brothers and 1 sister, started calling me fat, and every derogatory word and euphemism, is that the right word, for fat, that you could imagine. And it was consistent. It was a consistent thing. I woke up and that's what I heard when my parents weren't around, because of course it never happened when my parents weren't around. It was all that I heard, that I was fat, that I was fat. Let's just put it that way. I was fat, blubber, fatty, whale. And the funny thing is, I was never a bigger girl. I was always very skinny. And yes, in high school, puberty was happening. My hips got a little wider. My thighs got a little more filled out. I got a little more of a butt. I did not have boobs back then to save my life, but my body was changing, and my siblings, it was the teasing was just taken up on an everyday notch, and it was like there was a private campaign against me with my siblings. And I'm not saying that they're horrible people, because they're not. They're all amazing. We are all amazing adults. It's just something that happens, especially when you have siblings. You get ganged up on every once in a while, and I guess it was my time to be ganged up on. So that's what I was hearing on a daily basis. And it's true. When you hear something on a daily basis, consistently shoved in your face, you start to believe it. And I started to believe that I was overweight and obese and fat and so big. I started to believe that. And I honestly knew nothing really about dieting. I know my mom always tried to lose weight and she would try to do all these things, but then she'd give up after a week. So it was never a thing she would follow through with. And of course, like, I read in her magazines fad diets and stuff, but I'm just like, it never worked for my mom. It's not going to work for me. And I don't know where the decision came from, but I do remember one day I was looking at myself in my full-length mirror in my bedroom, and I was just like, I am fat, and I'm going to not be fat anymore. And I stopped eating, pretty much. Over the course of a day, I would eat an apple, and sometimes a bag of cheddar flavored popcorn, like the little bags that you get in the snack vending machines. That's what our school had. It's white cheddar flavored popcorn. That's if I was really hungry or if I was staying at school late. So I would eat an apple. Because I'm just, in my mind, I'm just like, the apple's healthy. I'll be fine. It has vitamins and stuff. This went on for several months. I'm not going to say a very, very long time, but it went on for about half a year. And I never noticed a weight loss, honestly. Thankfully, we did not have a scale at home to weigh ourselves on. I am eternally grateful for that, because it probably would have become an obsession to weigh myself on the daily basis, and began purging. I considered purging that apple after I ate it, but some part of my mind was like, you gotta eat. This is what you're eating. Don't get rid of that. And I did notice that I started gaining weight in my thighs, and I couldn't figure out why. It wasn't a lot, but for me, it was very noticeable. And through some research, because this was pre-internet, this was back in 94 and 95, when I was a freshman in high school. This was definitely pre-internet. I could have been a sophomore for all I know. I don't remember. Or just the very bare bones of the internet. But my school was a magnet for a health academy program, and just from casual questions and stuff, I found out that, you know, your body is storing whatever fat, whatever food it gets into fat, so it can survive. So I understood that that apple I was eating was turning into fat in my thighs. So I cut that down to half, which is not a smart decision. And still, the occasional bag of white cheddar popcorn that was it was really small. It was 50 cents in the vending machine, and it was really small, but that was just like, I remember I would usually have that on a Friday before going home. And the dumbest thing was, I was in charge of cooking our dinners at home. I cooked our meals. I made sure that everybody had dinner, and I just wouldn't eat. And nobody would notice, because there was all of us and my parents, and there was hockey practice and soccer practice at the time, and people were going all different places, so I kind of flew under the radar. So nobody at home noticed that I wasn't eating, which is fine, and it's exactly what I wanted. I made sure that I wasn't being noticed that way. Yeah, and on the weekend, I always made sure that one of my parents saw me eating an apple, so nobody would question it, and I made it, it was like I was having a snack. My parents worked full-time. On the weekends, they had off, but that's usually when the games were, like hockey and soccer games. That's when that was happening. So everybody was busy, and I was just able to just like slide and do my thing on the sly. Then the next big thing I remember is being woken up on a weekday by my father, who was extremely angry. He was shouting at me because I had fallen asleep on the couch after school. And he came home, and apparently I was sleeping sitting up on the couch. And honestly, while he was yelling, I'm just thinking, like, how did I fall asleep? I don't remember going to sleep. I don't remember being tired. How is this even happening? And I apologize. I'm like, I'm sorry. I must have been really tired from school. I fell asleep. And I understand why he was upset, because I was in charge of my siblings as they got off the bus to make sure they were okay. Luckily, they're not dumb, and they weren't dumb, and they knew to come inside when they came home, or just stay in the front yard. We knew better than to go into a stranger's car or whatever. My father was furious at me, and I honestly could not string together how in the world I fell asleep and why he was this upset. So that happened. And then I remember seeing that the color of my stool was changing. Instead of being like brown and normal, it kind of went black for a time, and then it just like kind of fell into a gray color, and then it went white. And I was just like, well, that's probably not good. I'm sorry, my camera's shaking, my fans are on, and I'm not turning them off. But yes, I was like, well, that's not good. But I felt fine. I just figured maybe my stomach was upset. Didn't really think about it too much. I remember falling asleep several more times, specifically after I got out of school, and I remember specifically asking my siblings to wake me up before Dad got home, because I didn't want to get in trouble again. I couldn't figure out why I was so tired. I just figured I was tired from school. And then the big thing that happened was one morning my dad woke me up, which is normal. He would always wake me up at 5 a.m. and that was my time to wake up in the morning and get dressed and ready for school and stuff, because my ankle popped. My bus came first, and I needed time to like eat and get dressed and wake up for the day and everything. And I was like, all right, I'm up, I'm awake, you can go, I'm not falling back asleep. He left, he said, have a good day. He left for work, and I'm just laying in bed. I'm like, all right, I gotta get up. And I literally tried to move my legs and my arms, and they wouldn't respond. Like, they would not move. And I was just like, what? I must be really tired. Sleep amnesia, whatever. Not amnesia. Sleep paralysis, that's the word. Maybe like my arms are still kind of sleepy. Like, I could kind of feel them, but I couldn't even make my fingers wiggle. I couldn't make my toes wiggle. And I tried for a little bit to get up, and I heard my mom down on the other side of the house, because she went to work later in the morning. And I remember calling out for her. My voice seemed so weak, because it was. My voice was so weak. And I guess she must have heard something in my voice, because she came right away. And she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, I can't get up. I can't move my arms, and I can't move my legs. And I literally had my head like on the pillow, just like, and I'm like, I couldn't move. And she's like, let me get the kids to school, stay right there. Do you need to use the bathroom? We're bringing you to the doctor right after, because the buses were coming very, very quickly at this point. And I was just like, I'm good, I just can't move. And she's like, all right, we're gonna take you to the doctor. My little baby sister, I guess it must have been when I was a freshman, because she hadn't started school yet. She started when I was a sophomore. I remember she didn't get on the bus, so. And must have been when I was a freshman in high school. So my mom got the kids on the buses, and she got my little sister dressed really quickly, and I don't know how I got into the car. I have a vague memory of my arm being around my mother, who was about my height at the time. She's shorter than me now, but I was about her height, I guess. I don't know how I got in the car, honestly. I can't remember it. I can't remember a lot of detail the next few weeks, but I do have some key memories, especially of this day. I don't know how I got in the doctor's office. I remember sitting in the waiting room, and I remember my mom talking to the receptionist in a very low, urgent voice. And the receptionist was nodding her head, and I was brought into like the little console, like the doctor's room. And I was put up on the table somehow. I know I couldn't get on the table. I remember that. I think my mom and a nurse helped put me on the table, and granted, I was a very small girl anyway and very skinny, so it must not have been too hard for them. But I was sitting on the table, kind of slumped over, because I couldn't hold myself up. And it's a big bolt of lightning, or a big flash of lightning. And I remember my mom was really calm. Like, she had a worried look to her eyes, but it was like she knew panicking. I'm sure she knew panicking wasn't gonna do anything. She was very calm, and the doctor came in right away, and he asked me what was wrong, and I told him I couldn't move my arms and my legs when I woke up this morning. And he nodded his head, and he's such a sweet man, and I don't remember his name. I really wish I did, but I do remember he was an Indian man, so he had a very thick accent. And most of the time I couldn't understand the accent, but I could understand the accent that day. Because it was really thick, and I loved it so much. I love listening to him talk, even if I couldn't really understand him. And he asked some questions, and I don't even remember what the questions were. And eventually I guess he was narrowing down, like, what could this be. He was a very efficient, very amazing doctor. And then he asked me, what have I been eating recently? And I told him an apple each day, half an apple. It was half an apple. I told him it was a half an apple each day, and sometimes I would have a little snack bag of popcorn, like every couple of days. And he was pretty calm. He was really calm. I didn't feel any judgment from him, which is pretty amazing. Or my mom. My mom was super calm. She was not the scary calm where you know you're gonna get your ass kicked later, but she was just super calm. And I remember that she had a very neutral look on her face, which is not something that she's known for. But she was just like, she had a very neutral look on her face. I remember my doctor asking me why. And I just sat on the table for a little bit, trying to contemplate an answer, and eventually I was just like, I'm fat, and I don't want to be anymore. And I remember my doctor and my mom looking at each other, but they didn't say anything. It was just a look. I'm sure that look conveyed a lot. And our doctor was like, okay, all right, where do you think you're fat at? And I told him, my legs, my hips, I'm fat. And he's like, why would you think that you're fat? And I got really quiet. So I did not want to tell them where I got this idea from, where I started believing this from. Because you know, the first rule of Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of siblings picking on each other and teasing each other is you don't talk about it unless somebody's bleeding. You don't talk about it, you don't screw anybody else, you don't throw anybody else under the bus. And my doctor, like, I was quiet for a bit, and he's like, I really need to know where you got this idea from. Did you come up with it on your own? Were you looking at magazines? And I was like, no, my brothers, my sister have been telling me for a very long time, and why would they lie about that? I mean, especially in my mind at the time, why would they lie about that? So he asked some more questions, and they were nice. I mean, he was very professional. It was very nice. I didn't feel like I was being attacked, which was, looking back on it, pretty amazing. My mom didn't interject or anything. And the doctor is like, alright, I need to take some blood samples. I'm gonna go get the needles and stuff. And he left the room for a minute, and I remember looking at my mom, and I'm just like, I'm expecting her to, like, you know, unload on me. And she didn't say anything. She was just looking at me, and I couldn't really read her expression, but I know it wasn't anger. And it wasn't disappointment, which was amazing. My little sister's sitting in the room next to her, and I'm just like, well, little baby sister, I just kind of told on you and everybody else. But I was feeling so shitty. I could not hold myself up, and I just couldn't figure out why I was feeling this way. So the doctor came in, and he took some blood samples, which is terrible because I am petrified of needles. My mom was holding me, like she always had to do when I had the blood samples taken. And he set several vials to the side, and he's like, I have to put these in the lab. Your results are going to come later, but I can do this test right here, so I'm going to go out and do this test and see what the readings are. And I was like, whatever. And he came back in, and the first question he asked was, do you want to die? And I was just like, no, not really. And this is also coming from the girl. I had tried to kill myself at the end of my 8th grade year. I actually tried to. Actually, no, it was in 7th grade because I still had my dog then. I did. I tried to commit suicide, and I was gonna drown myself, and it ended up being stopped by a memory that I had of my dad telling me something. So I had made that choice 2 years before. I did not want to die. I was still going to stick it out in this world. And I told the doctor, no, not really. And he looked at me and he's like, well, if you keep it up this way, you're going to end up dead. And I didn't really have an understanding of why he was saying this. And he showed me a blood result that he got from whatever test, and he's like, this is your reading that you have right now. I want to say it was like my white blood cell count. I don't remember. Like I said, my memory is really, really fuzzy. It could have been a doctor's appointment a day or so later, but in my memory, I think it was that day. And he said my white blood cell count was below any of the readable charts, and my body was going into shutdown mode. And if I had waited longer, if I hadn't told my mom I couldn't get up, if my body had kept going that day, I probably would have been dead in 2 or 3 days. He was testing like my joint reactions and my, I don't know, like he was pushing on my skin the elasticity of my skin, and he was pushing and seeing if my skin was changing colors. Like, I don't even know what it's called, but and nothing was responding. And he's like, you're very close to dying. If you go home and decide to continue not eating, you're going to be dead within the week. So you need to make a choice and see what you want to do with your life. Because your mom can't make the choice for you, and your siblings can't make the choice for you, and your dad's not making this choice for you. You need to make this choice. And I was honestly confused. All I wanted to do was lose some weight. And I was a bit shocked. And I'm sure the confusion was because I wasn't comprehending absolutely everything as quickly as I should be, but it wasn't a slap in the face. It was more of a, do I really want to get better or not? Do I really want to start eating again or not? And I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to die, but I did not want to eat. Food was becoming something that was very terrifying to me. Really terrifying. And the doctor was like, I'm gonna step outside with your mom, and she put my little sister out too, and we're gonna talk about some things, and you need to make this decision on your own. I'm not gonna let her make it for you. My mom nodded her head, and they stepped out, and I was in this room for what seems like a very long time. It could have just been a few minutes. It seems like an eternity. And eventually they stepped in, and my mom had some papers, and my doctor was like, do you have a decision? And I was just like, I don't want to die. I told him that pretty much like that. And he's like, okay, I'm going to get your other test results back this week. We're going to see how bad you've hurt yourself. And again, that was like a shock, because I was just like, well, I haven't cut myself. I haven't intentionally done anything to physically harm myself, except not eating. But that wasn't in my mind at the time. It wasn't a harmful thing. And then he said that he's given my mom a sheet of paper, and she handed it to me, and he said, this is the diet you need to go on in order to start reintroducing food into your body. Because if you just go in and just eat whatever, you're gonna get really sick, and that might actually kill you too. You need to slowly reintroduce food into your body. I nodded. I was agreeing to this on my own decision. I was like, okay. And my mom said that she was going to drop my little sister off with a friend, and we were going to go grocery shopping together. And that sums up the doctor's appointment. The memory that I have from it, mostly. But again, I don't remember everything. I remember looking at the list of food that was okay for me to start eating. It was very low sodium, easy, light, little foods. And I was not to eat 3 meals a day. I was to eat a few pieces, like 9 times a day. I was to eat a couple little things at least 9 times a day to get my body hungry again, and to not overwhelm my body with a lot of food at one time. It was just to be a little bit spread out. And I remember feeling really guilty that I was making this extra cost to my family, but my mom made it seem like it was no big deal. I was going to get some special food just for me, and I was going to pick out what I wanted from that list, because there were some things on it that I knew I wasn't going to eat, and I can't even remember them now. And we did. She dropped my little sister off with a family friend who watched her, and we went grocery shopping. And I remember having a hard time standing up walking, but she put her arm around me, and I was like pushing the cart, she was pushing the cart. I was hanging on to the cart for dear life, and we picked out some foods together, and we brought them home, and she made a little place for me in the pantry, and she said, whatever you want, this is your food, you eat it, it's your choice. And she made sure to make that very clear to me. It was my choice, and if I didn't want to eat it, and if I decided that I changed my mind, that I at least needed to let her and Dad know so they can make arrangements, which, looking back on it, is heartbreaking to think that I put my parents through that. And I made sure to kind of start eating. I don't know when. I want to say it was like later that day or the next day or a couple of days later. My mom rounded up my siblings into a room, and it was on the far side of the house, completely opposite to the bedroom where I was laying down in, because I couldn't, I could get up, but I had to roll myself out of the bed, and it was very difficult to move, but I was resting. I remember I was resting at one point, and it was in the evening, and she took my siblings to the other side of the house, and she let them have it. I want to say it was a constructive way, and I want to say that's also where all of her fear and frustration was kind of let out at the same time. But she explained to them what had happened to me and why it happened. I remember that. I don't remember the words. I don't remember, honestly, my siblings' reaction to it. I know that none of them looked me in the eye for a very long time. At least to me it was a very long time then. But I got the blood results back from all the testing and stuff, and all of my results were low. I gave myself anemia through starvation. The doctor said there was a chance that as I got healthier, the anemia will go away. Spoiler alert, it never did. Ever. And how low my levels actually were, all of my everything was so low. There were more tests that had to be taken. I had to do several urine tests over a period of time. I actually had to do fecal tests for 2 weeks, which was one of the most frustrating things to try and figure out on your own. But yes, I had to do fecal tests for 2 weeks. That was not fun. And I eventually got better. I did eventually get better, but I've always struggled, especially when I am in a depressive episode. I've always struggled with food since then. I really hate that the camera's bouncing, but I'm so not turning off my fans. It's so hot. So I go through many episodes where I don't want to eat. A lot. Almost. It's not always on a daily basis. When I'm depressed, when I'm in a depressive episode, it is on a minute-by-minute basis. When I'm not in a depressive episode, it's a lot easier to deal with and remind myself I am living. I want to continue living. I have an amazing husband who is very supportive, and he knows the story, but I don't think I told it to him in a way where I let him know that it's still a continuing problem. He does notice every once in a while when I'm not eating, he'll mention that, and sometimes I make an excuse for it, and sometimes I will get up and eat because he loves me enough to remind me that I do need to take care of my body. And sometimes it's a struggle and sometimes I just don't. But if I'm not eating, he will make sure to bring home things that will be very tempting for me. And I do have to remind myself of the question that my doctor had asked me, do I want to live or don't I? And I have to make that decision every single time I look at food and I'm just like, I don't want to eat this. I don't want to eat. And honestly now, I am much bigger than I have ever been in my entire life. My body is way bigger than it has ever been. I weigh almost 200 pounds. I'm only 5'4" tall. And I know a lot of the weight gain is because physically I am not able to be as active as I used to be. I used to dance for like 6 hours a day. Not that I was good at it, but I used to do that 4 days a week. I used to be a very, very physically active person, and with my disability evolving, taking away my mobility, I can't be as I used to be, and I'm struggling to adapt to that. So when I don't want to eat, it's hard to make that decision to put the food in my mouth and eat it. And it's probably going to be a struggle forever. I know that. I have seriously considered purging many times, especially with this more recent body change in the past decade. It is something I consider, at least on a weekly basis, if not daily, depending on where I'm at mentally. Honestly, I know it's not good, and I can at least say I haven't, but I consider it. I consider going back on the goddamn half-apple diet, and it's not a diet, but I consider that too. I really do. But I think at least I've evolved enough and I've matured enough to know that if I decide to do that, I'm not going to last very long. I know I'm not going to last very long. I am very anemic. I was hospitalized 2 years ago because my blood levels were so low, and I was being prepped for a blood transfusion, and that was, luckily, thankfully, it didn't have to happen, but I was prepped for it, and we were just waiting for the blood doctor, don't know what the title is, to make a final decision, and he decided to try iron transfusions first to see if that would help, because anemia is an iron deficiency in the blood, and luckily it did help. But I am very anemic. I have daily migraines because of that, and I struggle eating, which on the other hand, I am very, 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 very food motivated. You put a good piece of food or a snack or something delicious in front of me, I want that. But then I'll think about throwing it up. Go figure. I am a very food motivated girl. I do enjoy food. I do enjoy eating. But especially when the depression is in its full glory, that's when it gets the worst. Yeah, that's when it's almost a fixation. So that is roughly how I became anemic. I am still anemic. I will probably always be anemic. And as a result, I have daily migraines. My migraine just does not go away. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's way worse to where I can't deal with it. I currently have a migraine, but I've adapted to the pain stupidly. I've stupidly adapted to the pain. Yeah, so that's fun. And like on a scale of 1 to 10, my migraine, it's normally a 5 and a 6. Like right now, that's where it's at. But I have learned to live and adapt with it. Luckily, it doesn't make me nauseous and make me throw up. I am very thankful for that. But when it gets worse, when it hits like 7, 8, 9, and 10, I am pretty much useless and immobile and in a dark room without any sound or anything around me. Or I give myself a few sleeping pills and I put myself to sleep and hopefully wake up with less of one. But yeah. I did this to myself. I'm not saying I was bullied. It's just part of having siblings. I mean, honestly, I didn't do well with the daily teasing. And I don't blame my siblings for this whatsoever. I don't. They were kids. They were literally little kids, and I was a freshman in high school. I was a very young girl. They didn't know the severity of what they were doing. They had no idea. I mean, my little sister wasn't even in kindergarten. She didn't know. So it's just hard. It's hard, and this is a very long video, but I wanted to share it. Hopefully this time I will publish it. I will upload it and publish it. We'll see. I don't even know how much I looked at the camera. At least this time, I didn't break down crying like I did the last 2 times. I'm more at terms with myself. I have something to live for, and I have someone to live with. I have an amazing husband. I have beautiful kitties that are my babies. I have a good life. I'm not gonna say I don't. I'm not gonna say there's not struggles, but it's still hard. It is still hard, especially when depression is just like right there smacking you in the face. But yeah, that's it. I don't have anything else to take away for it. I think the biggest lesson that I learned the day that I was brought to the doctor's office was that it's my choice. And what do I want to do? Do I want to die? Or do I want to live? And some people might not want to live anymore. And I'm not going to judge you for it. But I hope you choose to live. I really do. Things get better. Especially if you're younger. Especially if you're in middle school and high school. Life gets better. It really does. And even though I still struggle with depression and anxiety, I love my life. I do. I'll talk to you guys later. I love you. Bye.